We treat the modern workplace like a temple. You can see it in the daily pilgrimage of millions of people swarming into the lobby of corporate high-rises. Except our devotion isn't measured in prayers. We worship productivity, profit margins, and endless quarterly growth. This creates a strange cognitive dissonance in the business world. A corporate executive might sit in a church pew on Sunday, listening to sermons about divine love and compassion, only to walk into the office on Monday and demand unpaid overtime because business is business. There is a deep irony in companies that publicly pride themselves on traditional Christian values, yet simultaneously pay their own staff unlivable minimum wages. Modern exploitation relies on sophisticated systems. Instead of outright forced labor, we have off-the-clock emails, mandatory side hustles, and gig economy algorithms that promise you complete freedom while quietly micromanaging every minute of your day. It is easy to look at massive wealth gaps and the exhaustion of the working class and view them entirely as failures of modern politics or modern economics. But the foundational scriptures of the Christian faith outline a specific pro-labor economic framework. The modern church and corporate culture have largely sidelined this history, prioritizing a version of the faith that avoids disrupting current economic structures. The biblical narrative begins with a creator who physically shapes the world, presenting work as a hands-on, deliberate act of construction. That framework gives the physical act of labor an inherent sacred dignity. So it makes perfect sense that one of God's first major interventions was an economic rescue. He pulled an enslaved workforce out of Egypt, an empire built entirely on maximum production and zero wages. After securing their freedom, he handed down strict labor laws. In the book of Leviticus, the rule was explicit: pay your laborers daily, and pay them on time. Do not hold a worker's wages overnight. In an ancient agrarian society, this was a matter of life and death. If an owner decided to withhold a few coins until Friday, the worker's family literally went hungry that night. The law of gleaning acted as a structural check on maximum efficiency. Landowners were prohibited from harvesting their entire crop to the very edges of the field. Those unharvested margins were deliberately left behind, so the marginalized could gather food to survive. Ancient biblical law drew a hard line. A business owner's right to take 100% of their profit was immediately restricted the moment it threatened the survival of society's most vulnerable people. Fast forward to the New Testament, and you find a deep historical irony. The central figure of Christianity was not born a king or a wealthy merchant. Instead, he spent his life as a blue-collar day laborer who knew exactly what a blister felt like. He taught through parables, including a story about workers hired for a vineyard. At the end of the day, the owner paid the people who had only labored for one single hour the exact same full-day wage as the people who had been sweating for 12 hours straight. This is grace economics. It rejects the strict capitalist idea of tying human value to hourly output, choosing instead to prioritize basic human need and radical generosity. Decades later, his brother penned the Book of James. It reads like a direct confrontation with the employer class. James explicitly commands wealthy landowners to weep and wail. He condemns them for hoarding rotting riches, while the people who actually harvested their fields cry out for their stolen wages. Pacing quickens. During the industrial exploitation of the 19th and 20th centuries, labor movements used this exact scripture as a battle cry against corporate greed. Yet somehow, many modern religious institutions gloss right over it. Take a look at this chart tracking income over the last 50 years. The flat horizontal line represents average worker wages, while the steep, skyrocketing line tracks executive compensation. The gap between the two is historically massive. To manage public relations around this wealth gap, modern corporations use a specific playbook. They extract maximum value from their workforce to generate record profits, and then they donate a tiny fraction of that money to charity for tax breaks and good press. But early theologians saw through this dynamic. St. Augustine established that corporate philanthropy is morally useless if it is funded by stolen wages and denied benefits. You cannot give away what you systematically withheld from your own employees. The ultimate counter to corporate hierarchy is the communion table. It is a space that strips away titles, net worth, and org charts, treating the chief executive and the night shift janitor as absolute equals. If that equality is real, business leaders must conduct a moral audit of their payroll. They need to look at their balance sheets and ask if their lowest paid employees can survive with dignity. True faith demands sacrifice. If an employer's convictions do not compel them to willingly reduce their own profit margins to care for the people creating that wealth, those convictions are empty. Economic justice aligns a market with its human purpose. On a balance sheet governed by these principles, paying a fair wage becomes the highest expression of the faith.